everything about math. I loved learning the formulas for the volume of a sphere, 4/3 pi r cubed. I always thought that was a great formula. When I got to high school, we started with plane geometry, proofs and theorems. That's where I really got gripped. I really loved that. I loved working on. Some of the problems were harder than others, and I liked doing that. I was never the fastest guy in the world, but I would plod through it and with determination. I just liked it.
Did it feel like this was where your career was going to take you, or were you like another boy who dreamed of being a baseballer or something?
No. The only thing I thought about was I would be a mathematician, whatever exactly that meant. I didn't know quite what it meant, except that mathematics was the only subject I really liked. Science was okay, but it wasn't very well taught where I went to high school, at least I don't think so. And history, English, I loved to read, but I wasn't a good writer. I read a lot. When I went to MIT, I majored in mathematics, of course, and skipped the first year because I'd had some of those courses in high school. And I even took a graduate course in my freshman year of a second semester in math, because it said no prerequisites required. So I said, oh, no prerequisites, I'll take that course. I had a very hard time getting my arms around that course. I finished it okay, but I was very puzzled by some of the concepts. However, that summer, I got another book. I got a book on, this was algebra, but not algebra like solving equations. It was abstract algebra. And then in a week, everything came together for me. I understood. I was no longer puzzled. I understood why they did everything. Other parts of math got me stymied for a while, but typically it would take some time for me to sort of grasp what they were trying to do, and then it would go very smoothly. So I graduated early from MIT in 3 years.
Did you imagine you would be a professor sitting in a university,
No.
or like what? You had no grasp of what?
I didn't. Yeah, by the time that my freshman year was over, I kind of realized that's what it would mean, that someone would pay you for thinking about mathematics and creating mathematics. What I thought earlier was I would do something that involved mathematics, but it was mathematics that I wanted to major in, and I could see quickly that, well, that's the way. If you're going to do that, you're going to be a professor somewhere and profess.
You also talked about this week of algebra where everything sort of fell into place.
Yeah.
Is that a common thing? Is this a thing that always happens? There's this moment where all the cogs move into place and it's like, oh, I get it now.
I think, yeah, there are moments like that. Sometimes you're introduced to a new concept and you wonder, well, why are they talking about this? Why is this concept interesting? And then you think and you see some examples and you say, oh yeah, okay, this is really good. A lot in mathematics is making definitions. You'll see things that really could come together under one aegis, and you can define this set of notions, and sometimes just a structure which follows all these notions. And that's a great way that mathematics has advanced, because when you put a lot of things together that have similar characteristics, then you can try to prove theorems about the general set of things rather than some particular example, and that turns out to be a very powerful approach. So making a good definition is a good thing. They wanted me to go to Berkeley and get away from MIT, meet some new faculty, because I was quite close to the MIT faculty, and they thought, I think they didn't want to get rid of me so much as they thought I was probably pretty good, so I should get exposed to a certain guy named Chern, who was just coming to Berkeley that year. And I got this very nice fellowship, and I went there. I was very eager to work with Chern, meet Chern, except he wasn't there. He celebrated his first year at Berkeley. He had just come to Berkeley, and he celebrated that first year by taking a sabbatical. So he wasn't there. So I worked with another guy, which was fine. And by the time Chern came, in the second year, I was already pretty far along with the thesis project. I was giving a seminar at the beginning of my second year at Berkeley, and in walked this tall Chinese guy. And I said to the guy next to me, who's that? I said, that's Chern. That's Chern. I didn't know he was Chinese. I thought Chern was probably short for Chernowski or something, or he was probably some Polish guy who had shortened his name to Chern. If it had been Chen or Chan, I would have known it was Chinese, but Chern with the R, I didn't know. But anyway, so I met Chern then, and we became friends. Of course, I was much younger than he, but we became friends and later collaborators.
Can you give some idea about what your area of specialization is at this point? What are you zeroing in mathematically on?
Well, at that point, and pretty much thereafter, the field that I worked in was called differential geometry. Differential geometry is geometry, but it's the geometry of curved spaces. It's not flat things in plane. It's any shape or form, but typically with some distance function so that you knew how far apart things were. And the basic object of study is what's called a manifold. And a manifold is a lot of pieces of space glued together. So, for example, the surface of a sphere is a manifold. Now, you can't just take one little sheet of paper and make a sphere out of that, but you could glue a bunch of pieces of paper together and make a sphere. So a manifold is something that locally in your neighborhood looks like it's just regular space. Maybe it's curved a little bit, but globally it could be quite different. So, and the surface of a tire, of a donut, for example, is fundamentally different from the surface of a sphere. You can't deform one into the other. What really got me onto it is a certain theorem, which is called Stokes' theorem. Now, Stokes' theorem is the ultimate, I think, generalization of what was originally called the fundamental theorem of calculus. Now, I don't know if you studied calculus, but the basic theorem is if you integrate the derivative of a function, so you take a function, you take its derivative, first derivative, and then you integrate that, let's say, from a to b. Well, that gets you back the original function. The answer, when you integrate the derivative, is of f. It's f of b minus f of a. That's the answer. If you integrate the derivative of a function, you get back the value of the function. Well, that was the fundamental theorem of calculus. Presumably Newton knew that. Now that had been generalized into higher dimensions. So there were other things you could integrate and differentiate and go from boundaries to interiors and so on. And the general statement of that theorem was, to me, almost breathtaking. It was so beautiful, that theorem. And that's one of the basic theorems in differential geometry. And it's about integrating something over the boundary, and that's the same as integrating something else over the interior, something related to it. It's derivative, in effect. It's differential. So there's a whole calculus of things called differential forms and integration and all that. And that it takes place in manifolds in general, and anything that looks like pieces of space. So I love that theorem.